Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time to review Past Lives. This is the directorial debut of Celine's song.
It follows two childhood friends from Korea, and then one of them moves to the United States, and it's about them reconnecting over the years. With an interesting detail that the one who moved away now is married. You may have heard the buzz for this one. It's pretty off the charts at this year's Sundance. By the end of the film, it seemed like most of my theater was in tears. And walking out of it, people were just talking to each other about how much they were crying and how much they enjoyed it and felt it was so deeply impactful. This has had a profound reaction on the Sundance audiences so far, and I hope that continues as it's released, even though it's going to be a while for most of you later this fall.
It will.
For the first half, I didn't quite see what people were getting at, and I didn't know if I was going to feel the same way. The film definitely takes its time building up the characters and the central premise, which I think in like the last half or the last third really pays off for the level of depth and richness that comes from it. We just get so many beautiful moments of these characters connecting and being honest with each other and trying to navigate questions that are larger than themselves about soulmates and really, the lives we could have lived. Everybody is going to have their own connection with this movie, I think. It's kind of impossible not to bring your own life experience into this film.
Well, I think that's what the movie's trying to get you to do. It's like, there are very few movies that have such a personal connection with their audience. This movie will touch a very sensitive spot in your soul. Some of these questions that the movie is exploring are things that we all consider and wrestle with, but they're actually questions that I feel like don't get brought up very much,
but I think
that aren't talked about. And what's beautiful in this movie is how these characters deal with them and they process them, and you as an audience member will process them too.
Yeah, it's like a soulful catharsis. And it's interesting that something so universal can be so difficult to sort of grapple with, but if you see the movie, you'll understand kind of why these things are hard to confront and why people don't want to look directly at them. What's really wonderful about this movie is that it doesn't give you the answer to these questions. It just gives you this space to explore this conflict.
When our two main characters are FaceTiming for the first time in over a decade, like, those scenes were really beautiful. And our lead actors, Teo Yoo and Greta Lee, are brilliant at conveying that longing and that excitement. These are really layered and internal performances. Especially, I would say, Greta Lee. Connecting with this movie is connecting with that performance.
John Magaro is instantly lovable as her husband, as someone who is fully able to realize like the awkward position that they're in and tries his best to confront these emotions he's feeling.
There's a really great scene with him and Greta Lee talking in bed.
This is a trio of excellent performances in a film that really does rely on the performances to move us through the story. The writing is excellent here. I think the writing does try to give you a lot to think about, but without directly answering the questions that it's posing. And it's one of those scripts where there's a lot left unsaid, and it's as much about the space between the words and the silence as it is about what is being said.
But there were some scenes where characters were communicating like pretty clearly with each other about what they were thinking. I would say that even bordered on being a little bit too much for me, like explaining your feelings very concretely. But where I think that it still works is that it's beautiful to see them actually communicating these things, and it makes up for it in having plenty of other scenes where the communication is less direct.
But I still feel like the difference is between explaining it is that even when the characters are processing their emotions, you can tell they're doing the best they can, but they're also reaching for answers that the script is not quite giving. I also think the story is really strong as an immigrant story. I imagine that those who have that experience of a memory with a country and a deep connection with that, and then now being in a new place and I guess unable to go back, I think that is a lot of where the richness of the story stems from.
Yeah, this movie is like very, very profound about the connections that you have with other people and which parts of yourself feel activated by other people. And also like this inexplicable connection that characters have with each other, like this feeling of being drawn together. A lot of times with our main two characters, they don't even have to be saying anything, but it just feels like there's a force that's pushing them together.
Visually, I think this movie can be very subtle and not imposing, and at the same time, I think it's really thoughtful. I'm thinking about a scene in which they're framing a conversation that's kind of happening between 3 people, but also between like 2 people at times. And there's some other shots with characters just walking around. I feel like there's a little bit of visual metaphor going on, and I really love a little dash of that.
Yeah, I'm never gonna look at that carousel in Brooklyn the same way again. Also, the last shot of this movie, that kind of burned itself into my brain for a long time, I think. And choices like that, you know, you come away with a very strong impression of Celine Song as a director.
This was a Sundance knockout. It definitely got me. It had me in tears for I don't know how long, but the whole ending. And it is one of the most delicate and rich films that I will see this year. I easily give this a 10 out of 10.
When I was on like minute 3 of just like sitting in the credits, crying to myself, I was like, I can't, this is a 10. This has to be a 10. You know, and when you have a movie that has, you know, these kind of reviews, these kind of reactions, that, you know, feels like it will speak to a lot of people very strongly, be in a lot of top 10 lists, you know, it's an A24 produced film. You do think, well, I think, you know, this movie could be an awards contender for next year. You almost don't want to talk about it in case you jinx it, but I think that's where we're heading with this movie.
It doesn't have a super recognizable cast, and it also is through and through an indie film, but nonetheless, I think just based on impact, this is probably going to be an awards movie.
It reminds me of a Call Me By Your Name type of contender. The screenplay is very strong, and picture and director could definitely come along too.
I just think this will be like a top 10 movie for critics at the very least.
Oh, for critics, it's going to be top 5, no question.
I think this is going to like hold above a 90 on Metacritic as well. I think that will get it into picture, director, screenplay. And on top of that, we've got some great performances that I think could go along with this.
I think John Magaro makes a great case for a supporting actor nomination.
Absolutely.
If this movie's in picture, I think he's going to come along with it.
I'd be so bummed if he didn't get it, because every scene he was in was like one of the most impactful of the film.
And I don't think that you could include just John Magaro. I feel like you have to go a little further.
Yeah, you got to go with one of the leads.
And I think you would go with Greta Lee maybe in lead actress.
Again, like she doesn't express her feelings with a bunch of tears or like with these huge moments, but it fits exactly what this character is going through. And I think because people love this film, they will realize how great this performance is.
And also Teo Yoo as a lead acting contender, like, he could also get some buzz. My impression was that he would be maybe less likely than the other two. I think he'll get some recognition, so we'll have to see how that goes.
Part of me thinks it's more likely that just Greta Lee gets in. But look, if our actor race this year is like the one next year, where Paul Mescal is the number 5 because like no one else is catching buzz, I would say this actor would get in.
And as far as techs go, I don't know if it is flashy enough in the cinematography department or the editing department. You know, 2 of the folks from Grizzly Bear did the music, and the music was great.
I forgot about that score.
It didn't. It also, I wouldn't say it had those Minari type moments where the score's really dominating certain scenes and really picks up. So I think it would need to do that to be able to get score. But
I think it still might get score. Also, like Minari, I think it's mostly in Korean. So this would qualify at some places as a foreign language film, but it's not like it will contend for international feature at the Oscars. It would contend for that award at the Golden Globes. So I'd be pretty shocked if this didn't catch on until the end of the year, if the buzz somehow died down.
It won't.
I see it as being some people's favorite of the year. Like, it's probably going to be in my top 3.
Go see this movie when it comes out, and hopefully you're not too sad that you won't be able to see it for months and months and months. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Which past life of yours do you like best?